This week's Grimm Fairy Tales, Hans in Luck. Hans had served his master for 7 years, so he said to him, "Master, my time is up now. I should be glad to go back home to my mother. Give me my wages." The master answered, "You have served me faithfully and honestly. As the service was, so shall the reward be." And he gave Hans a piece of gold as big as his head. Hans pulled his handkerchief out of his pocket, wrapped up the lump in it, put it on his shoulder, and set out on the way home. As he went on, always putting one foot before the other, he saw a horseman trotting quickly and merrily by on a lively horse. "Ah," said Hans quite loud, "what a fine thing it is to ride. There you sit as on a chair. You stumble over no stones. You save your shoes and get on. You don't know how." The rider, who had heard him, stopped and called out, "Holo! Hans, why do you go on foot then?" "I must," answered he, "for I have this lump to carry home. It is true that it is gold, but I cannot hold my head straight for it, and it hurts my shoulder." "I will tell you what," said the rider. "We will exchange. I will give you my horse and you can give me your lump." "With all my heart," said Hans, "but I can't tell you. You will have to crawl along with it." The rider got down, took the gold and helped Hans up, then gave him the bridle tight in his hands and said, "If you want to go at a really good pace, you must click your tongue and call out, 'Jup, jup.'" Hans was heartily delighted as he sat upon the horse and rode away, so bold and free. After a little while, he thought that it ought to go faster, and he began to click his tongue and call out, "Jup, jup." The horse put himself into a sharp trot, and before Hans knew where he was thrown off and lying in a ditch, which separated the field from the highway. The horse would have gone off too if it had not been stopped by a countryman, who was coming along the road and driving a cow before him. Hans got his limbs together and stood up on his legs again, but he was vexed and said to the countryman, "It is a poor joke, this riding, especially when one gets hold of a mare like this that kicks and throws one off, so that one has a chance of breaking one's neck. Never again will I mount it. Now, I like your cow, for one can walk quietly behind her and have, over and above, one's milk, butter and cheese every day without fail. What would I not give to have such a cow?" "Well," said the countryman, "if it would give you so much pleasure, I do not mind giving the cow for the horse." Hans agreed with the greatest delight. The countryman jumped upon the horse and rode quickly away. Hans drove his cow quietly before him, and thought over his lucky bargain. "If only I have a morsel of bread, and that can hardly fail me. I can eat butter and cheese with it as often as I like. If I am thirsty, I can milk my cow and drink the milk. Good heart, what more can I want?" When he came to an inn, he made a halt, and in his great content ate up what he had with him, his dinner and supper, and all he had, and with his last few farthings had half a glass of beer. Then he drove his cow onwards along the road to his mother's village. As it drew nearer midday, the heat was more oppressive, and Hans found himself upon a moor, which it took about an hour to cross. He felt it very hot, and his tongue clave to the roof of his mouth with thirst. "I can find a cure for this," thought Hans. "I will milk the cow now and refresh myself with the milk." He tied her to a withered tree, and as he had no pail, he put his leather cap underneath. But try as he would, not a drop of milk came, and as he set himself to work in a clumsy way, the impatient beast at last gave him such a blow on his head with its hind foot that he fell on the ground, and for a long time could not think where he was. By good fortune, a butcher just then came along the road with a wheelbarrow, in which lay a young pig. "What sort of a trick is this?" cried he, and helped the good Hans up. Hans told him what had happened. The butcher gave him his flask and said, "Take a drink and refresh yourself. The cow will certainly give no milk. It is an old beast. At the best, it is only fit for the plow or for the butcher." "Well, well," said Hans, as he stroked his hair down on his head. "Who would have thought it? Certainly it is a fine thing when one can kill a beast like that at home. What meat one has! But I do not care much for beef. It is not juicy enough for me. A young pig like that, now, is a thing to have. It tastes quite different. And then there are the sausages." "Hark ye, Hans," said the butcher. "Out of love for you I will exchange, and will let you have the pig for the cow." "Heaven repay you for your kindness," said Hans, as he gave up the cow, whilst the pig was unbound from the barrow, and the cord by which it was tied was put in his hand. Hans went on, and thought to himself how everything was going just as he wished. If he did meet with any vexation, it was immediately set right. Presently there joined him a lad who was carrying a fine white goose under his arm. They said good morning to each other, and Hans began to tell of his good luck, and how he had always made such good bargains. The boy told him that he was taking the goose to a christening feast. "Just lift her," added he, and laid hold of her by the wings. "How heavy she is! She has been fattened up for the last 8 weeks. Whoever has a bit of her when she is roasted will have to wipe the fat from both sides of his mouth." "Yes," said Hans, as he weighed her in one hand. "She is a good weight. My pig is no bad one." Meanwhile, the lad looked suspiciously from one side to the other, and shook his head. "Look here," he said, at length, "it may not be all right with your pig. In the village through which I passed, the mayor himself had just had one stolen out of its sty. I fear that you have got hold of it there. They have sent out some people, and it would be a bad business if they caught you with the pig. At the very least, you would be shut up in a dark hole." The good Hans was terrified. "Goodness," he said, "help me out of this fix. You know more about this place than I do. Take my pig and leave me your goose." "I shall risk something at that game," answered the lad, "but I will not be the cause of your getting into trouble." So he took the cord in his hand and drove away the pig quickly along a bypath. The good Hans, free from care, went homewards with the goose under his arm. "When I think over it properly," said he to himself, "I have even gained by the exchange. First there is the good roast meat, then the quantity of fat which will drip from it, and which will give me dripping for my bread for a quarter of a year, and lastly, the beautiful white feathers. I will have my pillows stuffed with them, and then indeed I shall go to sleep without rocking. How glad my mother will be." As he was going through the last village, there stood a scissors grinder with his barrow. As his wheel whirred, he sang, "I sharpen scissors and quickly grind. My coat blows out in the wind behind." Hans stood still and looked at him. At last he spoke to him and said, "All's well with you, as you are so merry with your grinding." "Yes," answered the scissor grinder. "The trade has a golden foundation. A real grinder is a man who, as often as he puts his hand into his pocket, finds gold in it. But where did you buy that fine goose?" "I did not buy it, but exchanged my pig for it." "And the pig?" "That I got for a cow." "And the cow?" "I took that instead of a horse." "And the horse?" "For that I gave a lump of gold as big as my head." "And the gold?" "Well, that was my wages for 7 years' service." "You have known how to look after yourself each time," said the grinder. "If you can only get on so far as to hear the money jingle in your pocket whenever you stand up, you will have made your fortune." "How shall I manage that?" said Hans. "You must be a grinder, as I am. Nothing particular is wanted for it but a grindstone. The rest finds itself. I have one here. It is certainly a little worn, but you need not give me anything for it but your goose. Will you do it?" "How can you ask?" answered Hans. "I shall be the luckiest fellow on earth. If I have money whenever I put my hand in my pocket, what need I trouble about any longer?" And he handed him the goose and received the grindstone in exchange. "Now," said the grinder, as he took up an ordinary heavy stone that lay by him, "here is a strong stone for you into the bargain. You can hammer well upon it and straighten your old nails. Take it with you and keep it carefully." Hans loaded himself with the stones and went on with a contented heart. His eyes shone with joy. "I must have been born with a call," he cried. "Everything I want happens to me just as if I were a Sunday child." Meanwhile, as he had been on his legs since daybreak, he began to feel tired. Hunger also tormented him, for in his joy at the bargain by which he got the cow, he had eaten up all his store of food at once. At last he could only go on with great trouble, and was forced to stop every minute. The stones, too, weighed him down dreadfully. Then he could not help thinking how nice it would be if he had not to carry them just then. He crept like a snail to a well in a field, and there he thought that he would rest and refresh himself with a cool draught of water. But in order that he might not injure the stones in sitting down, he laid them carefully by his side on the edge of the well. Then he sat down on it, and was to stoop and drink, when he made a slip, pushed against the stones, and both of them fell into the water. When Hans saw them, with his own eyes sinking to the bottom, he jumped for joy and then knelt down, and with tears in his eyes thanked God for having shown him his favor also, and delivered him in so good a way, and without his having any need to reproach himself, from those heavy stones which had been the only things that troubled him. "There is no man under the sun so fortunate as I," he cried out. With a light heart and free from every burden, he now ran on until he was with his mother at home. Clever Elsie. There was once a man who had a daughter who was called Clever Elsie, and when she had grown up, her father said, "We will get her married." "Yes," said the mother. "If only anyone would come who would have her." At length, a man came from a distance and wooed her, who was called Hans, but he stipulated that Clever Elsie should be really wise. "Oh," said the father, "she's sharp enough." And the mother said, "Oh, she can see the wind coming up the street, and hear the flies coughing." "Well," said Hans, "if she is not really wise, I won't have her." When they were sitting at dinner and had eaten, the mother said, "Elsie, go into the cellar and fetch some beer." Then Clever Elsie took the pitcher from the wall, went into the cellar and tapped the lid briskly as she went, so that the time might not appear long. When she was below, she fetched herself a chair and set it before a barrel so that she had no need to stoop, and did not hurt her back or do herself any unexpected injury. Then she placed the can before her and turned the tap, and while the beer was running, she would not let her eyes be idle, but looked up at the wall, and after much peering here and there, saw a pickaxe exactly above her, which the masons had accidentally left there. Then Clever Elsie began to weep and said, "If I get Hans and we have a child, and he grows big, and we send him into the cellar here to draw beer, then the pickaxe will fall on his head and kill him." Then she sat and wept and screamed with all the strength of her body over the misfortune which lay before her. Those upstairs waited for the drink, but Clever Elsie still did not come. Then the woman said to the servant, "Just go down into the cellar and see where Elsie is." The maid went and found her sitting in front of the barrel, screaming loudly. "Elsie, why weepest thou?" asked the maid. "Ah," she answered, "have I not reason to weep? If I get Hans and we have a child, and he grows big and has to draw beer here, the pickaxe will perhaps fall on his head and kill him." Then said the maid, "What a clever Elsie we have! and sat down beside her and began loudly to weep over the misfortune. After a while, as the maid did not come back, those upstairs were thirsty for the beer. The man said to the boy, "Just go down into the cellar and see where Elsie and the girl are." The boy went down, and there sat clever Elsie and the girl both weeping together. Then he asked, "Why are ye weeping?" "Ah," said Elsie, "have I not reason to weep? If I get Hans and we have a child, and he grows big and has to draw beer here, the pickaxe will fall on his head and kill him." Then said the boy, "What a clever Elsie we have," and sat down by her, and likewise began to howl loudly. Upstairs they waited for the boy, but as he still did not return, the man said to the woman, "Just go down into the cellar and see where Elsie is." The woman went down and found all three in the midst of their lamentations, and inquired what was the cause. Then Elsie told her also that her future child was to be killed by the pickaxe, when it grew big and had to draw beer, and the pickaxe fell down. Then said the mother likewise, "What a clever Elsie we have," and sat down and wept with them. The man upstairs waited a short time, but as his wife did not come back, and his thirst grew ever greater, he said, "I must go into the cellar myself, and see where Elsie is." But when he got into the cellar, and they were all sitting together crying, and he heard the reason, and that Elsie's child was the cause, and that Elsie might perhaps bring one into the world some day, and that it might be killed by the pickaxe, if it should happen to be sitting beneath it, drawing beer just at the very time when it fell down, he cried, "Oh, what a clever Elsie," and sat down, and likewise wept with them. The bridegroom stayed upstairs alone for a long time. Then as no one would come back, he thought, "They must be waiting for me below. I too must go there and see what they are about." When he got down, 5 of them were sitting screaming and lamenting quite piteously, each outdoing the other. "What misfortune has happened then?" he asked. "Ah, dear Hans," said Elsie, "if we marry each other and have a child, and he is big, and we perhaps send him here to draw something to drink, then the pickaxe, which has been left up there, might dash his brains out, if it were to fall down. So have we not reason to weep?" "Come," said Hans, "more understanding than that is not needed for my household. As thou art such a clever Elsie, I will have thee." And he seized her hand, took her upstairs with him, and married her. After Hans had had her some time, he said, "Wife, I am going out to work and earn some money for us. Go into the field and cut the corn that we may have some bread." "Yes, dear Hans, I will do that." After Hans had gone away, she cooked herself some good broth and took it into the field with her. When she came to the field, she said to herself, "What shall I do? Shall I shear first, or shall I eat first? Oh, I will eat first." Then she emptied her basin of broth, and when she was fully satisfied, she once more said, "What shall I do? Shall I shear first, or shall I sleep first? I will sleep first." Then she lay down among the corn and fell asleep. Hans had been at home for a long time, but Elsie did not come. Then said he, "What a clever Elsie I have. She is so industrious that she does not even come home to eat." As, however, she still stayed away, and it was evening, Hans went out to see what she had cut, but nothing was cut, and she was lying among the corn asleep. Then Hans hastened home and brought a fowler's net, with little bells, and hung it round about her, and she still went on sleeping. Then he ran home, shut the house door, and sat down in his chair and worked. At length, when it was quite dark, clever Elsie awoke, and when she got up there was a jingling all round about her, and the bells rang at each step which she took. Then she was alarmed and became uncertain whether she really was clever Elsie or not, and said, "Is it I, or is it not I?" But she knew not what answer to make to this, and stood for a time in doubt. At length she thought, "I will go home and ask if it be I, or if it be not I." They will be sure to know. She ran to the door of her own house, but it was shut. Then she knocked at the window and cried, "Hans, is Elsie within?" "Yes," answered Hans, "she is within." Hereupon she was terrified and said, "Oh, heavens! Then it is not I," and went to another door. But when the people heard the jingling of the bells, they would not open it, and she could not get in nowhere. Then she ran out of the village, and no one has seen her since. Hans married. There was once upon a time a young peasant named Hans, whose uncle wanted to find him a rich wife. He therefore seated Hans behind the stove, and had it made very hot. Then he fetched a pot of milk and plenty of white bread, gave him a bright, newly coined farthing in his hand, and said, "Hans, hold that farthing fast, crumble the white bread into the milk, and stay where you are, and do not stir from that spot till I come back." "Yes," said Hans, "I will do all that." Then the wooer put on a pair of old patched trousers, went to a rich peasant's daughter in the next village, and said, "Won't you marry my nephew Hans? You will get an honest and sensible man who will suit you." The covetous father asked, "How is that with regard to his means? Has he bread to break?" "Dear friend," replied the wooer, "my young nephew has a snug berth, a nice bit of money in hand, and plenty of bread to break. Besides, he has quite as many patches as I have." And as he spoke, he slapped the patches on his trousers. But in the district, small pieces of land were called patches also. "If you will give yourself the trouble to go home with me, you shall see at once that all is as I have said." Then the Messier did not want to lose this good opportunity, and said, "If that is the case, I have nothing further to say against the marriage." So the wedding was celebrated on the appointed day, and when the young wife went out of doors to see the bridegroom's property, Hans took off his Sunday coat and put on his patched smock frock and said, "I might spoil my good coat." Then together they went out, and wherever a boundary line came in sight, or fields and meadows were divided from each other, Hans pointed with his fingers, and then slapped either a large or small patch on his smock frock, and said, "That patch is mine, and that too, my dearest. Just look at it," meaning thereby that his wife should not stare at the broad land, but look at his garment, which was his own. "Were you indeed at the wedding?" "Yes, indeed I was there, and in full dress. My headdress was of snow. Then the sun came out, and it was melted. My coat was of cobwebs, and I had to pass by some thorns which tore it off me. My shoes were of glass, and I pushed against a stone, and they said, 'Clink,' and broke in two." The boy who did not fear. A certain father had 2 sons, the elder of whom was smart and sensible and could do everything, but the younger was stupid and could neither learn nor understand anything. And when people saw him, they said, "There's a fellow who will give his father some trouble." When anything had to be done, it was always the elder who was forced to do it. But if his father bade him fetch anything when it was late, or in the night time, and the way led through the churchyard or any other dismal place, he answered, "Oh no, father, I'll not go there. It makes me shudder," for he was afraid. Or when stories were told by the fire at night which made the flesh creep, the listeners sometimes said, "Oh, it makes us shudder." The younger sat in a corner and listened with the rest of them, and could not imagine what they could mean. "They are always saying, 'It makes me shudder. It makes me shudder.' It does not make me shudder," thought he. "That too must be an art of which I understand nothing." Now it came to pass that his father said to him one day, "Hearken to me. Thou fallow in the corner there, thou art growing tall and strong, and thou too must learn something by which thou canst earn thy living. Look how thy brother works, but thou dost not even earn thy salt. Well, father, he replied, I am quite willing to learn something indeed, if it could but be managed. I should like to learn how to shudder. I don't understand that at all yet. The elder brother smiled when he heard that, and thought to himself, Good God, what a blockhead that brother of mine is. He will never be good for anything as long as he lives. He who wants to be a sickle must bend himself betimes. The father sighed and answered him, Thou shalt soon learn what it is to shudder, but thou wilt not earn thy bread by that. Soon after this, the sexton came to the house on a visit, and the father bewailed his trouble, and told him how his younger son was so backward in every respect that he knew nothing and learnt nothing. Just think, said he, when I asked him how he was going to earn his bread, he actually wanted to learn to shudder. If that be all, replied the sexton, he can learn that with me. Send him to me, and I will soon polish him. The father was glad to do it, for he thought, it will train the boy a little. The sexton therefore took him into his house, and he had to ring the bell. After a day or two, the sexton awoke him at midnight, and bade him arise and go into the church tower and ring the bell. Thou shalt soon learn what shuddering is, thought he, and secretly went there before him. And when the boy was at the top of the tower and turned round, and was just going to take hold of the bell rope, he saw a white figure standing on the stairs opposite the sounding hole. Who is there? Cried he, but the figure made no reply and did not move or stir. Give an answer, cried the boy, or take thyself off. Thou hast no business here at night. The sexton, however, remained standing motionless, that the boy might think he was a ghost. The boy cried a second time, What do you want here? Speak if thou art an honest fellow, or I will throw thee down the steps. The sexton thought, He can't intend to be as bad as his words, uttered no sound, and stood as if he were made of stone. Then the boy called to him for the third time, and as that was also to no purpose, he ran against him and pushed the ghost down the stairs, so that it fell down 10 steps and remained lying there in a corner. Thereupon he rang the bell, went home, and without saying a word, went to bed and fell asleep. The sexton's wife waited a long time for her husband, but he did not come back. At length she became uneasy, and wakened the boy and asked, Dost thou not know where my husband is? He climbed up the tower before thou didst. No, I don't know, replied the boy. But someone was standing by the sounding hole on the other side of the steps, and as he would neither give an answer nor go away, I took him for a scoundrel and threw him downstairs. Just go there and you will see if it was he. I should be sorry if it were. The woman ran away and found her husband, who was lying moaning in the corner, and had broken his leg. She carried him down, and then with loud screams she hastened to the boy's father. Your boy, cried she, has been the cause of a great misfortune. He has thrown my husband down the steps and made him break his leg. Take the good-for-nothing fellow away from our house. The father was terrified and ran thither and scolded the boy. What wicked tricks are these? Said he. The devil must have put this into thy head. Father, he replied, do listen to me. I am quite innocent. He was standing there by night like one who is intending to do some evil. I did not know who it was, and I entreated him 3 times either to speak or to go away. Ah, said the father, I have nothing but happiness with you. Go out of my sight. I will see thee no more. Yes, father, right willingly. Wait only until it is day. Then will I go forth and learn how to shudder, and then I shall, at any rate, understand one art which will support me. Learn what thou wilt, spat the father. It is all the same to me. Here are $50 for thee. Take these and go into the wide world, and tell no one from whence thou comest, and who is thy father, for I have reason to be ashamed of thee." "Yes, father, it shall be as you will. If you desire nothing more than that, I can easily keep it in mind." When day dawned, before the boy put his $50 into his pocket, and went forth on the great highway, and continually said to himself, "If I could but shudder, if I could but shudder." Then a man approached who heard this conversation which the youth was holding with himself, and when they had walked a little farther, to where they could see the gallows, the man said to him, "Look, there is the tree where 7 men have married the rope-maker's daughter, and are now learning how to fly. Sit down below it and wait till night comes, and you will soon learn how to shudder." "If that is all that is wanted," answered the youth, "it is easily done. But if I learn how to shudder as fast as that, thou shalt have my $50. Just come back to me early in the morning." Then the youth went to the gallows, sat down below it, and waited till evening came. And as he was cold, he lighted himself a fire. But at midnight the wind blew so sharply that in spite of his fire he could not get warm. And as the wind knocked the hanged men against each other, and they moved backwards and forwards, he thought to himself, "Thou shiverest below by the fire, but how those up above must freeze and suffer." And as he felt pity for them, he raised the ladder and climbed up, unbound one of them after the other, and brought down all 7. Then he stirred the fire, blew it, and set them all round it to warm themselves. But they sat there and did not stir, and the fire caught their clothes. So he said, "Take care, or I will hang you up again." The dead men, however, did not hear, but were quite silent, and let their rags go on burning. On this he grew angry and said, "If you will not take care, I cannot help you. I will not be burnt with you." And he hung them up again, each in his turn. Then he sat down by his fire and fell asleep. And the next morning the man came to him and wanted to have the $50, and said, "Well, dost thou know how to shudder?" "No," answered he. "How was I to get to know? Those fellows up there did not open their mouths, and were so stupid that they let the few old rags which they had on their bodies get burnt." Then the man saw that he would not get the $50 that day, and went away saying, "One of this kind has never come my way before." The youth likewise went his way, and once more began to mutter to himself, If I could but shudder. If I could but shudder." A wagoner who was striding behind him heard that and asked, "Who are you?" "I don't know," answered the youth. Then the wagoner asked, "From whence comest thou?" "I know not." "Who is thy father?" "That I may not tell thee." "What is it that thou art always muttering between thy teeth?" Replied the youth, "I do so wish I could shudder, but no one can teach me how to do it." "Give up thy foolish chatter," said the wagoner. "Come go with me. I will see about a place for thee." The youth went with the wagoner, and in the evening they arrived at an inn, where they wished to pass the night. Then at the entrance of the room the youth again said quite loudly, "If I could but shudder! If I could but shudder!" The host, who heard this, laughed and said, "If that is your desire, there ought to be a good opportunity for you here." "Be silent," said the hostess. "So many inquisitive persons have already lost their lives. It would be a pity and a shame if such beautiful eyes as these should never see the daylight again." But the youth said, "However difficult it may be, I will learn it, and for the purpose indeed have I journeyed forth." He let the host have no rest until the latter told him that not far from thence stood a haunted castle where anyone could very easily learn what shuddering was, if he would but watch in it for 3 nights. The king had promised that he who would venture should have his daughter to wife. and she was the most beautiful maiden the sun shone on. Great treasures likewise lay in the castle, which were guarded by evil spirits, and these treasures would then be freed, and would make a poor man rich enough. Already many men had gone into the castle, but as yet none had come out again. Then the youth went next morning to the king and said if he were allowed, he would watch 3 nights in the haunted castle. King looked at him, and as the youth pleased him, he said, "Thou mayest ask for 3 things to take into the castle with thee, but they must be things without life." Then he answered, "Then I ask for a fire, a turning lathe, and a cutting board with the knife." The king had these things carried into the castle for him during the day. When night was drawing near, the youth went up and made himself a bright fire in one of the rooms, placed the cutting board and knife beside it, and seated himself by the turning lathe. "Ah, if I could but shudder," said he, "but I shall not learn it here either." Towards midnight, he was about to poke his fire, and as he was blowing it, something cried suddenly from one corner, "À moi! How cold we are!" "You simpletons," cried he, "what are you crying about? If you are cold, come and take a seat by the fire and warm yourselves." And when he had said that, 2 great black cats came with one tremendous leap and sat down on each side of him, and looked savagely at him with their fiery eyes. After a short time, when they had warmed themselves, they said, "Comrade, shall we have a game at cards?" "Why not?" he replied, "but just show me your paws." Then they stretched out their claws. "Oh," said he, "what long nails you have! Wait, I must first cut them for you." Thereupon he seized them by the throats, put them on the cutting board, and screwed their feet fast. "I have looked at your fingers," said he, "and my fancy for card playing has gone." And he struck them dead and threw them out into the water. But when he made away with these 2, and was about to sit down again by his fire, out from every hole and corner came black cats and black dogs with red hot chains. And more of them came until he could no longer stir, and they yelled horribly and got on his fire, pulled it to pieces and tried to put it out. He watched them for a while quietly, but at last, when they were going too far, he seized his cutting knife and cried, "Away with ye, vermin!" and began to cut them down. Part of them ran away, the others he killed, and threw out into the fish pond. When he came back, he fanned the embers of his fire and warmed himself. And as he thus sat, his eyes would keep open no longer, and he felt a desire to sleep. Then he looked round and saw a great bed in the corner. "That is the very thing for me," said he, and got into it. When he was just going to shut his eyes, however, the bed began to move of its own accord and went over the whole of the castle. "That's right," said he, "but go faster." Then the bed rolled on as if 6 horses were harnessed to it, up and down over thresholds and steps, but suddenly, hop, hop, it turned over upside down and lay on him like a mountain. But he threw quilts and pillows up in the air, got out and said, "Now anyone who likes may drive," and laid down by his fire and slept till it was day. In the morning the king came, and when he saw him lying there on the ground, he thought the evil spirits had killed him, and he was dead. Then said he, "After all, it is a pity. He is a handsome man." The youth heard it, got up and said, "It has not come to that yet." Then the king was astonished, but very glad, and asked how he had fared. "Very well indeed," answered he. "One night is past. The 2 others will get over likewise." Then he went to the innkeeper, who opened his eyes very wide and said, I never expected to see thee alive again. Hast thou learnt how to shudder yet? No, said he, it is all in vain. If someone would but tell me. The second night he again went up into the old castle, sat down by the fire, and once more began his old song. If I could but shudder. When midnight came, an uproar and noise of tumbling about was heard. At first it was low, but it grew louder and louder. Then it was quiet for a while, and at length with a loud scream, half a man came down the chimney and fell before him. Hello, cried he, another half belongs to this. This is too little. Then the uproar began again. There was a roaring and howling, and the other half fell down likewise. Wait, said he, I will just blow up the fire a little for thee. When he had done that and looked round again, the two pieces were joined together, and a frightful man was sitting in his place. That is no part of our bargain, said the youth. The bench is mine. The man wanted to push him away. The youth, however, would not allow that, but thrust him off with all his strength, and seated himself again in his own place. Then still more men fell down, one after the other. They brought 9 dead men's legs and 2 skulls, and set them up and played at 9 pins with them. The youth also wanted to play and said, Hark you, can I join? Yes, if thou hast any money. Money enough, he replied, but your balls are not quite round. Then he took the skulls and put them on the lathe and turned them till they were round. There now, they will roll better, said he. Hurrah! Now it goes merrily. He played with them and lost some of his money, but when it struck 12, everything vanished from his sight. He lay down and quietly fell asleep. Next morning the king came to inquire after him. How has it fared with you this time? Asked he. I have been playing at 9 pins, he answered, and have lost a couple of farthings. Hast thou not shuddered then? What? Said he. I have made merry. If I did but know what it was to shudder. The third night he sat down again on his bench and said quite sadly, If I could but shudder. When it grew late, 6 tall men came in and brought a coffin. Then he said, Ha ha, that is certainly my little cousin, who died only a few days ago. And he beckoned with his finger and cried, Come, little cousin, come. They placed the coffin on the ground, but he went to it and took the lid off, and a dead man lay therein. He felt his face, but it was cold as ice. Stop, said he, I will warm thee a little, and went to the fire and warmed his hand, and laid it on the dead man's face, but he remained cold. Then he took him out and sat down by the fire and laid him on his breast and rubbed his arms that the blood might circulate again. As this also did no good, he thought to himself, When 2 people lie in bed together, they warm each other, and carried him to the bed, covered him over and laid down by him. After a short time the dead man became warm too and began to move. Then said the youth, See, little cousin, have I not warmed thee? The dead man, however, got up and cried, Now will I strangle thee. What? Said he. Is that the way thou thankest me? Thou shalt at once go into thy coffin again. And he took him up and threw him into it and shut the lid. Then came the 6 men and carried him away again. I cannot manage to shudder, said he. I shall never learn it here as long as I live. Then a man entered, who was taller than all others, and looked terrible. He was old, however, and had a long white beard. Thou wretch, cried he, thou shalt soon learn what it is to shudder, for thou shalt die. Not so fast, replied the youth. If I am to die, I shall have a say in it. I will soon seize thee, said the fiend. Softly, softly, do not talk so big. I am as strong as thou art, and perhaps even stronger." "We shall see," said the old man. "If thou art stronger, I will let thee go. Come, we will try." Then he led him by dark passages to a smith's forge, took an axe, and with one blow struck an anvil into the ground. "I can do better than that," said the youth, and went to the other anvil. The old man placed himself near and wanted to look on, and his white beard hung down. Then the youth seized the axe, split the anvil with one blow, and struck the old man's beard in with it. "Now I have thee," said the youth. "Now it is thou who will have to die." Then he seized an iron bar and beat the old man till he moaned and entreated him to stop, and he would give him great riches. The youth drew out the axe and let him go. The old man led him back into the castle, and in a cellar showed him 3 chests full of gold. "Of these," said he, "one part is for the poor, the other for the king, the third is thine." In the meantime, it struck 12 and the spirit disappeared. The youth therefore was left in darkness. "I shall still be able to find my way out," said he, and felt about, found the way into the room, and slept there by his fire. Next morning the king came and said, "Now thou must have learnt what shuddering is." "No," he answered. "What can it be? My dead cousin was here, and a bearded man came and showed me a great deal of money down below, but no one told me what it was to shudder." "Then," said the king, "thou hast delivered the castle and shalt marry my daughter." "That is all very well," said he, "but still I do not know what it is to shudder." Then the gold was brought up and the wedding celebrated. But howsoever much the young king loved his wife, and however happy he was, he still said always, "If I could but shudder, if I could but shudder." And at last she was angry at this. Her waiting maid said, "I will find a cure for him. He shall soon learn what it is to shudder." She went out to the stream which flowed through the garden, and had a whole bucket of gudgeons brought to her. At night, when the young king was sleeping, his wife was to draw the clothes off him and empty the bucket of cold water with the gudgeons in it over him, so that the little fishes would sprawl about him. When this was done, he woke up and cried, "Oh, what makes me shudder so? What makes me shudder so? Dear wife! Ah, now I know what it is to shudder."